Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So we are continuing with Macbeth Act 2. We just finished reading scene 1, and at the end of that scene, we saw that Macbeth had been hallucinating. He had been seeing a dagger that was, as he said, marshaling him the way that he was going. So presumably, he was headed toward King Duncan's chamber, and the hallucination urged him on even more. So again, we have the witches who are urging him on, Lady Macbeth who is urging him on, and then now these hallucinations, which are also kind of furthering him along in this act of murder. And I kind of want to talk about what a tragedy is at the start of this scene. Just to reiterate, a tragedy is not me walking out into the middle of the street and getting hit by the car. That would be a tragic event, I assume, but it would not be a dramatic tragedy, which is where we see a tragic hero like Macbeth unravel on stage because of some either tragic flaw or some events that seem out of his control. Um, and so I wanted to start this scene with that in mind because of the events that take place in this scene. You can kind of come back to that idea, and that will make more sense after we read the scene. So without further ado, let's continue in scene 2. Enter Lady Macbeth. That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. Remember, Lady Macbeth had with wine and wassail um, gone to Duncan's guards to seduce them and get them drunk, right? So she had presumably been drinking with them. So that which hath made them drunk hath made her bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark, peace! It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman, which gives the sternest good night. He is about it. The doors are open, and the surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die. Macbeth within. Who's there? What? Ho! Lady Macbeth. Alack, I am afraid they have awaked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark! I had laid their daggers ready. He could not miss them. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I'd have done it. Couple interesting things are happening here. So we see Lady Macbeth a little bit unnerved. She seems frightened by some noises that are taking place. Okay. She even expresses her fear that the attempt and not the deed confounds us or ruins us. She states that she's laid their daggers ready. And so Macbeth is going to take those daggers and to commit the deed himself. The reason she could not have done it as planned is because he what? He resembled her father. So here we have some character development. We saw Lady Macbeth earlier in the play, and she seemed to be the one wearing the pants, if you will, right? Making all of the moves and even claiming that she would bash her child's brains in um, had she been given the chance, right? But when it actually comes time for her to commit the murder, she couldn't have gone through with it. Tells us a little bit more about Lady Macbeth. She's a lot more talk than she is action. So she could talk the talk, can't necessarily walk the walk. And at that, we have Macbeth enter with bloody daggers. He's probably covered in blood. There's blood on these daggers, and so we know that he has now just committed this murder. Notice that we don't see it take place on scene, or on stage, I'm sorry, in the scene on stage. Why might that be? Think back to what I have just discussed about this being a tragedy. We are meant to, as an audience reserve some sort of pity or sympathy for Macbeth, who, as I stated at the beginning of this explanation and analysis, um, has been urged on by not only the witches who are equivocating and toying with him, his wife, and now he's hallucinating too. So he seems, to be the subject of a lot of torment, and we will see that continue to develop as we keep reading. So Macbeth is entering the scene. He's covered in blood, and he's got these bloody daggers with him. My husband, Lady Macbeth says, I have done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise? I did hear the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did not you speak? When? Now. As I descended? I. Hark! Who lies in the second chamber? Donalbain. This is a sorry sight. Notice here the quick, short responses back and forth to one another. This would heighten the suspense, right? So things would move a little bit more quickly and it would seem much more suspenseful. Now, Macbeth utters these words. He says, "This is a sorry sight." What do you imagine he's looking at? Is he looking at his wife or is he looking at his hands? It's interpreted in both ways, but because of the way that the rest of the scene unravels, presumably he is looking at his bloody hands saying, "This is a sorry sight," which would indicate that he is feeling immediate regret. Lady Macbeth, a foolish thought to say a sorry sight. She wasn't able to do it, and yet she's chiding him about his immediate remorse. Macbeth says, "There's one did laugh in his sleep, and one cried, Murder! That they did wake each other, I stood and heard them. But they did say their prayers and address them again to sleep." He's talking about Duncan's sons who are asleep in the chamber next to where Duncan is sleeping. And they wake in the middle of the night and they say their prayers and then they go back to sleep. This kind of juxtaposes what is going to occur for Macbeth as a result of this. They are able to sleep. Macbeth will sleep no more. Lady Macbeth says, "There are two lodged together." One cried, "God bless us and amen." The other, "As they had seen me with these hangman hands listening their fears, I could not say amen when they did say, God bless us. Consider it not so deeply," Lady Macbeth says. "But wherefore could I not pronounce amen?" Wherefore meaning why. Why could not I pronounce amen? He's asking, why couldn't I then say amen? I had most need of blessing and amen stuck in my throat. So he's not able to pray at this moment in time, obviously, right? He just committed murder. Lady Macbeth says, "These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad. Methought I heard a voice cry, Sleep no more, Macbeth doth murder sleep, the innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labour's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's peace." I love the way that he describes sleep here. In fact, I'll tell you a little anecdote, as I usually do if I were to be teaching this in front of you in a classroom. So my little sister had to give a speech on sleep when she was in college for one of her health classes. And I had her, she and I worked with her on it to help her. I had her start the presentation with this quote from Macbeth here. He calls sleep something that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care. He calls it the death of each day's life, sore labor's bath, right? So you're out there working hard, right? Doing yard work perhaps. And then it's the bath at the end of the day that you get to clean yourself. The balm of hurt minds, nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast, right? So we're talking about the nutrients that nourish us, right? So sleep nourishes us. And so he's very poetic here talking about sleep because this becomes a motif. Macbeth will sleep no more, okay, from this moment forward. Lady Macbeth says, "What do you mean?" Still it cried, "Sleep no more," to all the house. "Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." Lady Macbeth says, "Who was it that thus cried? Why, worthy Thane, you do unbend your noble strength to think so brain sickly of things? Go, get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go, carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood." Okay, a couple interesting talking points here. So Lady Macbeth says, why, worthy Thane, do you think so brain sickly of things, right? So she's telling her husband to stop thinking like this. And then she says, go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hands. Okay. So a little water will just clean this blood and then we'll be good, she says. Okay. Becomes very important later on in the text. Here, she notices that he brought the daggers from the place. Now that was silly, right? So she instructs him to go take the bloody daggers back. Macbeth's response to this instruction from his wife is, I'll go no more. I am afraid to think what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not. Lady Macbeth says, infirm of purpose. Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal, for it must seem their guilt. So she is talking about the guards. She's going to smear them in blood and leave the daggers with them. She exits now with the daggers, and there is knocking within. Okay, so we hear knocking at the door. Whence is that knocking? Macbeth is probably startled by this knocking. How is it with me when every noise appalls me? What hands are here? So he's looking at his bloody hands when he recites this. What hands are here? Ha! They pluck mine eyes out mine eyes. They pluck mine, ha! They pluck out mine eyes. Sorry, little tongue twister there. Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hands? Those of you that know mythology, you might know that Neptune is the ocean, right? So is the god of the ocean. I'm sorry. So will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood from my clean from my hands? Now, obviously, the ocean water would wash away the blood from his hands, but what can it not wash away? And that is his guilt. He continues, no, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas in Cardine, making the green one red, making the ocean red, right? His hands will make the entire ocean red. He's being hyperbolic. Enter Lady Macbeth. My hands are of your color, but I shame to wear a heart so white. There's more knocking. I hear a knocking at the south entry. Retire we to our chamber. A little water clears us of this deed. How easy it is then. Your constancy hath left you unattended. Hark, more knocking. Get on your nightgown, lest occasion call us and show us to be watchers. Be not lost so poorly in your thoughts. Macbeth says, to know my deed uh, to know my deed 'twere best not to know myself. Wake thy knocking with wake Duncan with thy knocking. I would thou couldst. Sorry guys, I was a little rough in the end there. But this knocking is going to seamlessly bring us into the next scene. So we'll get into that tomorrow. Hopefully that clears up scene 2 for you. Adios, everybody.